Okay, so for the last portion of our plants and rocks and ocean and water and dances and all the lovely things in life that we all love, I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience when it came to travel and some of the places that I've been. I mentioned I've been to Hawaii. And I've also been to El Salvador, and that is, I feel, a unique place that not many people have been to, or necessarily maybe don't have the desire to go to. Um, I've actually been to El Salvador twice. It was a fantastic experience. It was a learning experience for sure. I learned a lot about how um, even though in the US how we have our own challenges and our own battles within our political structure and our morals and ethical values in some ways, it was quite astonishing, I'll say, to see how vastly different and privileged my life is compared to some other people in the world, and especially in Latin America, where they're not given opportunities and the privileges that I'm given here. And so it was a very humbling experience. I went twice. Both times that I went were incredible. But I wanted to share with you a little bit about my experience and how I feel that I feel connected to the world in a lot of ways post those trips that I don't think if I had ever left Michigan or left my box, so to speak, like my ethical and moral box, and just gotten out there in the world and seen things and felt things and experienced things for myself that I probably would never have, to be honest. And um, when I went to Hawaii, I was able to tour a plantation, which was amazing. It was the Dole Plantation. I didn't know that. I just wanted to see what it was like. I know you're laughing because Dole is like not the best. It's not like a locally sourced thing. It's actually a very international thing. But I was able to tour the Dole Plantation. But something else that I was able to do when I was there was really amazing. So not only were we able to see how things were made, but I went up to North Shore and I was able to see how certain coffee was harvested. I've actually toured a coffee, like a mom and pop coffee plantation, which was incredible. I've also been able to tour a lot of different vineyards, which I would say is also a very incredible thing to see. The amount of like grace and care that goes into from these farmers that goes into their crops. And obviously, this is the way that they make a living and provide for themselves. But I'll never forget. I was actually in El Salvador and I toured a coffee plantation there, and they spoke no English, but we had a translator there, and it was up in a mountain, volcano side, like it was just the most incredible thing ever. And I remember them talking to us about the process, and it's such a lengthy thing to make coffee. Well, this is tea, but I drink coffee like religiously and think nothing of it. And it's interesting to me now thinking about only like I try to only drink local, sustainably sourced, fair trade, fair purchase, sustainable coffee. And I don't mean like, oh, it's from Costco and it's organic. That literally doesn't mean anything to me. But not that it's bad if you do that, but like I said, I think it's just like it lacks like a little bit more logic and like critical thinking than that. But some people just truly don't know. But to me, it really reflected in my life in a way where these people are caring so much about the soil, the mountain that they're growing on, why they grow here and not there, and the sun, and how that, like, everything about it was so like sacred and intentional and needed and important. And something as simple as coffee that I don't think about very often, or most of us don't think about. There's so much work and like effort and care that goes into some of these things. And it was interesting to me going to the Dole plantation because I can definitely see where it lacks a lot of sustainability. It was definitely more of like a tourist attraction. It was really great though to see how, where a lot of our pineapples and bananas and things like that. I don't know if that's truly where a lot of that stuff is sourced, or if a lot of it was just planted for, you know, the tourist purpose. Honestly, it probably was a little more of the latter, maybe a little bit of both. But I thought of this because I think that this brought up when we were talking about the zero sum game and um, the importance of competition in our culture. And to me, it really kind of reminded me, like in an abstract way, of being on that plantation. And I put myself back there in that moment and I was thinking, like, could you imagine if the people who were making that coffee and growing those beans, like, were in competition in some way, whether it be themselves or like the beans, like if the beans were in competition with their other crops or the soil or the sunlight, or that coffee would not be able to be produced. And I know it's kind of more like an abstract thing because literally the coffee can't compete. So I understand that aspect of it, but just thinking about how if we say like my species, right? Like human beings being more important or more valued as moral beings in our society, um, if we truly feel that way, and I think a lot of people do, if people truly feel that way, if you equate that back to my experience at the coffee plantation in El Salvador, there's no way that you could produce what you wanted to produce. And so, as a human being, how could you produce and contribute morally, ethically, spiritually, physically? Like, how could you contribute and make something of something that isn't, you know? So it's just a really interesting concept to think about. And when you think about the idea of why competition is so important in our society and why it eliminates and crosses out so many different species, it really bothers me that people, this is a sidebar, not to get off on animal rights again, but it bothers me when people go and they hunt those endangered species because it's like a thing. But to me, that really is just a way of like morally getting off and saying like, I'm more powerful. It was like our reading that we did last week. It's kind of what it made me think of. So when you're competing against other species instead of valuing them, even some, like if I was competing against my prayer plant and was like, this is my sunlight, you can't have this. This is my corner. This is my humidity. This plant would die. And why do we not think of that and the consequences of our competition and how that affects the not just the plants and animals around us, but like the water, pollution, our air. And in our reading, I love that it said, I actually wanted to read that quote because it's tying in right here. So it said, to know oneself is to know one's Waka Papa. I think I said that correctly. To know about a tree, a rock, the wind, or the fishes in the sea is to know their Waka Papa. And it also said here, it's a little bit further up. Yeah. Here, the interpenetration of human and plant takes place in this life. This is an immediate earthly kinship. The dreamings begin. The dreaming beings emerged from the ground and are linked in basic kinship, in law, by being earthborn. In such recognition of ancestral relatedness is coupled with a direct recognition that each being is also autonomous in this life. That was really big for me. Each dreaming being walks the earth independently, and every life form that came out of the earth and every modern descendant of an original life form is still autonomous. And to me, that really reminded me um, a little bit of that non-zero sum game and why competition and like you had mentioned, like why is the relationship, the kin, like the reading described it as an earthly kinship, meaning like we're born of the same family, the same bloodline. So why is the relationship not valued, but the competition and elimination is more valued? To me, that was a really, really profound thing to think about. Um, there was also one more thing, the idea of, I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting a little off topic, but I just want to make sure I hit it. Why is animal rights and plant rights as a concept sort of dumb? Not because plants and animals don't matter, and what's the alternative? And this was something that actually I had really struggled with last week a little bit, because I had always thought, like, I'm always for fair treatment and treating an animal humanely, not gutting it for what it can do for you. And to me, that's just a moral thing in general. Thinking about my plants and not just how they serve a purpose in my life and what they do for me, but what I do for them as well, and how I pay homage and give back to the life-giving principle that I had talked about previously. So to me, it was interesting because I was thinking about my plants, but also rocks and the ocean, and how do we give something rights that they can't technically use? And it was interesting. You had mentioned, like sexual abuse, or getting in like a fist fight. I'll just use that as another example. I can exercise my right to protect myself, or grab someone's arm and say, hey, don't touch me like that, don't hit me, don't punch me. Whereas a plant can't do that. A plant can't say, hey, don't cut my leaf off, hey, don't take that apple, hey, don't cut off the top part of the basil plant because I'm going to die if you do that. A plant can't do that. So it was a little bit challenging for me, like mentally, to think about like what does it mean to truly give something a right? And I think the ding 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 moment is, I remember I was listening to your lecture, I was unloading my dishwasher, and I was like, that's it. And so I remember thinking to myself, I said, that's why that conversation of morality and rights, that's why that conversation, and I think you worded it in such a way of like rights language tied to morality. Like morality can't be based on rights language, because there are certain things that demand our moral appreciation and just acknowledgement in general that can't receive rights. So because they can't use and exercise their rights, does that mean that we shouldn't respect something? And that's a really interesting concept. So I definitely just wanted to make sure I touched on that before I finished. But the last thing I really want to talk about was respecting plants and the ocean without being crazy, although I think it's not crazy to think about that, just being honest. But like I said, when I had went to El Salvador, there was such an appreciation, and I still have a rock. It's in my special box, is what I call it. It's like all my little keepsakes and stuff. And I have a little rock from El Salvador, and it was a piece of the lava. And I got it when I was there, and I actually had lunch at the top of the volcano, or at the top of the mountain, and then we had gone back down or whatever. But I still have a rock, and to me, that really symbolized not just my journey, but being able to stand on top of a lot of people who have. I get to climb mountains all the time because I live out here, but when I was in Michigan, being part of the water was something that I was more accustomed to. I had never climbed a mountain or gone rock climbing, or I'd never had crystals or anything like that. I didn't even really know what any of that was really till I moved out here. And until I had went to Hawaii, I feel that, sorry, my phone went off. Until I had went to Hawaii, I really experienced the volcano, mountains, and water all together. And I know I always talk about Moana, but like I love Hawaii so much. And to me, there was such a special thing about being on a land, again, that compost idea, like every dead thing brings about a new thing. So does it really mean that it died? I don't know. And to me, it was such an incredible thing to be able to stand there and say, like, holy cow, like this used to be, like where I'm standing right now literally never used to exist, which is like a crazy concept to think about. But like this was water. I would be swimming in the middle of the ocean, and fire from the inside of the Earth's mantle came out, exploded, and cooled down on the water and created land, created rocks. And to me, just having a moral appreciation for something like that, whether you sit here and pet your pet rock every day, having an appreciation from that and taking that little souvenir with me from El Salvador and still having a piece of that is still something that's really special to me. I've always felt very connected to the water. I have a wave, actually, I don't know if you can see, tattooed on me. And it always symbolized coming back to where I felt my home was, and that was California. My dad was from here, and I always said that through the highs and the lows, no matter how rough my life gets, every wave eventually reaches the shore. And I think that there's something really powerful about water and the ocean and waves and how that connects to our life, spiritually and emotionally. It's connected me in a lot of ways to even family members that I never really got to meet. So to me, that was something I wanted to tattoo and always remind myself that, a lot of what I do is very centered around the things that are in the earth. And I always try to draw back to that in my life when I remember certain things, whether things I'm going through with family or whatever. I always come back to that moment when I had my feet in the water first time in California, and I was like, I'm here. Like I felt so grounded, and it's like a weird hippie thing, but like it truly is like a profound feeling to be connected with the earth in that way. So, and then I guess the last little thing I just wanted to wrap up. I was going to talk about going on Mars, but honestly, I just think that that's so stupid, and our human race sometimes is so ridiculous, and they just think like, oh, I destroyed this, so let's just go somewhere else and destroy that too. The amount of ignorance and like lack of accountability and responsibility and dignity, and like the list could go on and on and on. It's just so absurd to even hear people say that. I don't even like want to talk about it, to be honest, but yeah, I think that's a terrible thing, and all we're going to do is go destroy another planet that's not even really welcoming us to come on it, which, by the way, is made of rock. So I guess the last little thing I just wanted to touch on was just the class in general and kind of some of like my reactions to it. And some of it was really challenging and interesting for me. I was like, whoa, this is really out there, but not necessarily in a bad way. It was just a really interesting scope and lens on how to not just view the world, but how to view yourself. And I think that was kind of the point as well. But I think just feeling at the end of the quarter, looking back at how I felt on week one and how I feel now, I have taken quite a few classes on multiculturalism, and I have actually done a couple courses on Indigenous societies. I wouldn't go as far as saying multicultural communication, because that's, I know, kind of like a taboo thing, but just learning about the Indigenous people and their values. I actually have a really good friend of mine who it claims to be part of an indigenous society, and he's since left California and is relocating to Arizona. And I mean, the dude's like the real deal, like APC, like doesn't have a TV, like lives with the rocks and the animals, and like he's the real deal. So it's really been an eye-opening thing for me to just take not just a lot of like worldly principles, but also a lot of just like mental and moral principles, and see how I can really better my life, but also the world around me as well. So it's been a really interesting class, and I really enjoyed it. And hopefully my plant spirit will carry on, and you'll think of me next time you see a Venus flytrap or something. But the sun's coming out, so the plants will be happy today. But I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, and I would love to stay in contact with you. And if there's anything you need from me or just want to talk and say, hey, I'd love to stay in touch with you. And you know, hope all is well in Chicago. But I hope you have a great quarter, and thanks for a super awesome class. And that's all I got. So thank you again. Thanks for letting me communicate my thoughts in this way. That's like a really awesome thing. And I'm really pushing for that in education for alternative assignment, because not everybody just sits and writes papers. I'm a good writer, but I would really prefer for you to see my reaction and my response. So thank you for allowing me to do that and facilitate an environment where I feel comfortable to learn at my pace and the way, and communicate the way that I feel best suits me and represents me and what I'm all about. So I would love to stay in touch with you. So I'll talk to you soon, hopefully. Bye.